All right, welcome back to One True Podcast. With me again is my friend Zach Smith. He's here on my screen. Usually that means he's there when we put this thing together. But Zach, how you doing this morning?
Doing great. Had a great run this morning, so I'm feeling, refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah, I told Zach that he ran 10 more miles than I did this morning. Because he ran exactly 10.
Exactly. I got to get ready for that marathon one way or another.
Yes, there you go. And with us this week is Keff Ciardello, who has covered Texas State for a number of years, also a Texas State alum, but has been with the Statesman, Austin American-Statesman, covering the Bobcats. This is going on your 8th season, Keff, right?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Good to be here, Brice. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you joining us and dropping some knowledge on the Bobcats. I'm just glad we got football again. It's fun. So let's dive in. So guys, college football is back. We had some games last week, but Baylor and Texas State will open the 2023 season Saturday at McLane Stadium. It's the third straight year that the Bears and the Bobcats have played. 2 years ago, Baylor had a Big 12 championship team, went to the Sugar Bowl, but that game, that season opener was really close down there in San Marcos, 29-20. Baylor won that one. Last year, a little more of a blowout. Richard Reese ran for 3 touchdowns, the freshman back then for Baylor, and Baylor won 42-7. What are you guys expecting this time around? Either one of you.
Well,
hit
it, Zach.
Guess first.
All right. Well, it's that you brought up the one 2 years ago, the 29-20 game. That I feel like the score made it look closer than it was. Brady McBride, the quarterback for the Bobcats, had 3 picks that game, and there was a really late touchdown for the Bobcats that made it a 7-point game. Then there was a safety, I feel like, right at the end that made it that weird 9-point, that 29-20 score. So that one, it looks closer than it actually was. It was a solid 10-point lead for Baylor that whole game. And as far as like the history of Texas State versus Baylor, that was really close. The biggest loss Texas State has ever had, 75-0 in 1916 to Baylor. So when you compare it to something like that, it's not as bad. Or even compared to last year when it was 42-7, I believe that score was. Only Bobcats had Ashton Hawkins with 13 catches. That was it really for the Bobcats. He was the only thing going. It could be a little closer to what we saw last year just because of all the new stuff with the Bobcats. 53 new scholarship players, 71 overall new players, including walk-ons. So it's a complete overhaul of this roster. It's a brand new coach. It's a brand new everything. So everybody's kind of working on the continuity, getting used to the whole situation. So I think it'll be a little bit of a slow go. It's like 27 points, I believe Baylor is favored to win by. I think they might be able to still cover in there, but I think it's going to look a little more like last season.
What do you say, Zach?
Yeah, I think it's a good test for Baylor's defense specifically, because we all know what Kenny and Incarnate Word put up offensively last year, and like you said, Keff, with all the newness and kind of the offense that they run, I think it matches up in a unique way to kind of maybe expose some things for kind of a younger Baylor secondary and kind of an inexperienced, not inexperienced front, but inexperienced secondary really. And so I think it sets up as a good test, right? I think Baylor should win, but I think it's gonna teach Aranda and Baylor exactly what they want to learn, especially about their defense, based on everything that Texas State, at least early, has shown on tape.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. I think the line is the line for a reason, and I think Baylor should win comfortably. Keff's right. I was down at that game in San Marcos 2 yeyears ago, and it was, you never felt like Baylor didn't have it in control. It was just, honestly, I thought it was kind of a sloppy game. And at that point in Dave Aranda's run, I mean, the jury was very much still out. Baylor had not had a very good 2020 season. There was a lot of reasons for that. Aranda got hired right in the middle of a pandemic and, got to not have any spring drills. And so, there were a lot of factors there. What I remember most, Keff, about that game down in San Marcos? That was my first game down in San Marcos. And I thought it was cool. They had the tailgating down in past the end zone, inside the stadium. Is that a regular thing?
So that's called Cat's Garden. It's been regular the last few years. It's actually going to be gone this year because they're doing this whole renovation project on the end zone complex. That's that little area right there where the weight room is and the locker room and the coaching offices. They're totally revamping it. It's a big multi-million-dollar expansion or renovation, I should say. And so it's gonna kind of be out in the back of the end zone where Cat's Garden was before for this season. So they're suspending it this year, but they're going to bring it back next year. I guess it does look like a tailgate. It is tailgate, but it's supposed to be family friendly. There's the jump house for the kids or bounce house.
I loved that. I thought it was unique. You don't see that at every stadium.
No, I mean, hey, we don't have that P5 life down here in the G5. You gotta do what you gotta do to get people out there. But they would even have a stage there. They'd hold concerts after the game. Usually it's a moderately popular artist coming out there and playing, and it was pretty cool. I'm sure they'll bring it back next year, and fans definitely appreciated it. But I think they'll appreciate the renovations a little bit more. But yeah, that's one of the unique things about San Marcos is they enjoy the tailgate. That's for sure.
That's for sure. It's a cool town. So Keff, you referenced it earlier, but to say that Texas State has some new faces on the roster would be an understatement. Obviously, there's GJ Kinne, the new head coach. And you mentioned it, 53 new scholarship players. That's just I can't even wrap my head around that. So even in this transfer portal happy world, that's a pretty incredible number. How much of an unknown does that, make these Bobcats for you? I mean, as someone who follows the team, and then among those new players, who's somebody that we should kind of keep an eye on?
Yeah, well, I'll say from a coverage standpoint, it made for great content all off season. 53 guys to write about and talk about, and it was fantastic.
It's a football team. That's what that is. I mean, it's a whole new team.
It's two recruiting classes in one. It's pretty remarkable. I definitely hadn't seen anything like that here. What's crazier is that it's only the second biggest in the nation behind Colorado. What they're doing with 70 over there. It's just that, it's the era. And I think everyone's also taking advantage of the no allotment, the 25 scholarship allotment. But I've heard that ends after this year where they're going to go back to it, but I'm not exactly sure what's going on with that. Whatever, teams are taking advantage, and the Bobcats definitely did. And yeah, from a coverage standpoint, all you can really do is you look at them on paper and you say, well, this guy's coming from a P5. I think it's something 20 some odd players are from P5 schools, which is usually an upgrade coming to Texas State. You look at that and you're like, oh, okay, this looks like they are upgrading at certain positions, but you don't really know till you see it on the field. And you can see it in practice, but they haven't let us been watching 11 on 11. So we only really see the individual drills at the beginning and the warm-ups. And so there's quite a bit of unknowns. I mean, the entire offensive line is brand new guys. Those are all new guys, all five of the starters. The quarterback's going to be new. The tight end is new. There's the running back. There's a couple receivers. There's a couple guys on defense, but otherwise everybody's new. You still have holdovers on the D line and at linebacker, but all the DBs are brand new guys, and you can be told, hey, this guy's a really good player. Hey, he came from this other place where he just didn't get a shot, and that's why he's coming here to actually get a shot and play, trying to bounce back. This guy was a former 5-star. Now he's coming to Texas State because he couldn't play. We don't know until we see it on Saturday. And going against Baylor, it's obviously that's a weighted test right there. That's an opponent that is going to be much better than the Bobcats, at least on paper. I mean, you never know any given Saturday, But when you look at it, that's the way it's going to shake out. So with all of that being said, it's going to be a lot of evaluation on the coach's side, on my side, on fan side of this team. And I would fully expect them to unload the roster at some point in this game, even at the quarterback position. Quarterback one is obviously the one that everyone is the most interested about, with two SEC transfers, Auburn transfer, TJ Finley, and Arkansas transfer, Malik Hornsby. Hornsby came first in January, was here for the spring, and then they added Finley in the summer. So Hornsby has that little bit of an advantage that he was here in the spring, a little bit of a heads up on this offense, this fast-paced offense that GJ Kinne likes to do. It's been compared actually to our Briles, the run and shoot style offense. It's a variation on that. You see it in a lot of high school teams as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's where it's fast paced, but it's not just passing. There's a lot of running involved in it as well. And so with that being said, Malik Hornsby is more the speedster, dual threat. He runs the ball a lot. You look at Incarnate Word's offense last year with Lindsey Scott Jr. He ran the ball a lot, was that dual threat, won the Walter Payton Award, scored like 60 touchdowns, something like that, a crazy amount at the FCS level. So you could see why maybe they would lean towards somebody like Malik Hornsby. But everything every time I go out there, it seems like you see TJ Finley coming out first. You see his arm in practice, and he has a really, really strong arm. And he's a completely different style of player than Malik Hornsby. Malik Hornsby, speedster, as I said, track star. And then you look at TJ Finley, 6'7", 250, not the fastest guy, but he's got a cannon. Not a ton of touch deep, but man, anything intermediate throws, it's there. It feels like when he lets go of the ball, it's there twice as fast as the other guy's passing. So you definitely see the difference there. So I fully expect to see both. I expect to see a lot of you might see all 53 of those players we just talked about, even a lot of the true freshmen. There was only 7 true freshmen, high school players in that 53-man class, just to show you. The rest are transfers and JUCO. But even some of those true freshmen are getting in the mix, like Chris Don, Jalazen Landry, Bammy Badusi. Some of these guys, these true freshmen may even get out there. So you're going to see a lot of different Bobcats on Saturday. It's a long-winded way of me to tell you that.
No,
for sure.
It's obviously players have their names on the back of their jerseys. I feel like they should have "Hello, my name is," a little sticker right here. It's just insane. And I expect, the 2023 season for the Bobcats will be a lot of get to know you, because, I don't think they're going to be able to evaluate them all after just this one game against Baylor. There's going to be, a lot of figuring out their identity over these, probably first 4 or 5 games at least. So
yeah, chance, Keff, we see the Baylor transfer quarterback. I know he's probably down the depth chart a little bit, but
CJ Rogers, I got to give him credit because I mentioned Malik Hornsby was here in the spring, so it was CJ Rogers and Malik Hornsby, and Rogers was hanging with Hornsby the whole spring, even in the fall camp. They've said, hey, Rogers is in the mix, he's getting a shot. Well, everybody knows it's kind of been a 2-man race ever since Finley got here. But he's stayed competitive. He's really he's worthy of playtime. I think when you look at the 2 guys ahead of him, you understand why he might be 3rd on the depth chart. But he is somebody. He came a long way from last year to this year. He got here so late from Baylor and didn't play at all last year. Probably should have gotten a shot last year. When they didn't let another quarterback take a snap last season besides Lane Hatcher, and that didn't work out well. And so maybe they should have tried him out, especially because spring was the first time we really got to see him. He's a pretty special player himself, and he played in the run and shoot in high school at Argyle, won a state championship, 16-0 at Argyle, and so he's familiar with this offense. I wouldn't mind seeing him get a shot either, just because the whole Baylor ties, everything you just said, Zach. I mean, that would be pretty cool for him. I know last year after the Baylor game, or I think it might have been before the game, a bunch of Baylor players mobbed him and jumped up on him and were saying hi to him and everything. So I could tell he still has some friends there. Victor Obi's a Bobcat as well too at defensive line. So maybe we could see him get in there. Lots of Baylor ties. Landry Kinne is GJ Kinne's brother. I'm sure y'all have talked plenty about that, and then GJ's dad is Gary Joe Kinne, Baylor grad.
Yeah, and GJ himself, I was mentioning this to Zach the other day. So when he was coming out of high school as a quarterback, he was a Baylor commit. He never did sign with Baylor, but there was certainly a lot of thought that he was going to come here, and then he flipped and, whatever. But yeah, Gary Joe is he both played and coached at Baylor. Gary Joe Kinne, GJ's dad. So there you go. There are some connections, and Aranda talked a little bit about those connections at his presser on Monday. So, Zach, in our first pod of the season back when we were previewing fall camp, we referenced it. I'm sure we'll talk about it probably ad nauseum. Come back for that, listeners. But Baylor has a very unique schedule this year. National leading 8 home games. It's the first time in program history that they've had 8 home games. It's just insane. So how important is it for Dave Aranda's team to just, make some hay in these games, especially with 4 right off the bat at home?
I think it's a huge, there are a lot of questions about Baylor, right? We don't really know. It could go either way, right? Baylor could easily compete for, a Big 12 title, or they could have a season like last year, right? Where things kind of go off the rails pretty easily. And I think we'll get a very good sense these first really 3 games before Texas, where they are, how confident it, Dave Aranda can talk up Blake Shapen's confidence, and everybody can talk up Blake Shapen's confidence, but until it's, the lights are on and, you're actually playing against a top 25 opponent like Utah, that's really going to tell us where it is. And this defense, there are, like I said before, many question marks, especially in the secondary. And how are the transfers going to, like Mike Smith, going to kind of gel? And, can Gabe Hall and TJ, lead that defensive line? And a team like Texas State with the run and gun offense are perfect tests to answer some of those questions that, the coaches can tell us all these good things that they see in practice, but that's not the game, right? So, I think they're huge in terms of just a kind of a learning curve and telling us really which way Baylor is going to go. Because, I'm optimistic. I think they can compete for a Big 12 championship, and these first 4 games are absolutely massive.
Yeah, and they certainly need to go out, I think, and put together like a 4-quarter full performance, against Texas State, and not, be looking ahead to next week's game, which is a pretty big one with Utah, future Big 12 foe coming to Waco. I mean, that's, it could get a little sloppy if you're kind of looking ahead a little bit. So, I think that'll be big on Saturday.
And listening to GJ Kinne's press conference, I think he's almost counting on that, right, Keff? Like, I think he said that, we kind of hope they're looking, that he mentioned Utah, right? And he was like, we're kind of hoping to catch him sleeping a little bit. They're not coming in here to lose. They're coming in here to shock the world, I think he said, right? But yeah.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly how he phrased it. It's shock the world when he was talking about it, hoping that these, I mean, that's what schools like Texas State always have to do with these P5s. Just hope that they underestimate you and are looking forward to their next big opponent. But yeah, that's definitely something the Bobcats are trying to count on. And even though I was talking about they're going to be cycling through this roster and cycling through these 53 men and, the whole 27 points underdogs, GJ Kinne's not worried about that. I mean, I was at practice on Tuesday, and they let you come out a little early whenever they're doing warm-ups. Like I was saying, they don't let you watch 11 on 11. Right when I got there, they're already doing 11 on 11. So they're like, hey, we're going to shoo you back. So I didn't get to watch any practice. And when he came to the press conference, they were going full pads. They're going hard. They are 11 on 11, the full practice. He's like, we have a game Saturday. We're trying to win. This is a violent game. And so they're definitely hoping that they are thinking, well, hey, let's preserve ourselves for Utah while the Bobcats are going to try to go all out. And maybe you can catch them sleeping a little bit, but it's a tall task, no doubt. As we've mapped out, it's going to take a lot for the Bobcats to do that. And you were talking about Blake Shapen and you even go when we were Brice earlier, when you were comparing 21 to 22, those Baylor-Texas State games when it was Jerry Bohannon versus Blake Shapen, I could see a definite difference when it was Shapen last year. And so I expect him to have a pretty good season, and this will be a good first game for him. These first 4 games, that's a really good test as you were mapping out, Zach.
Yeah, I've said it before. I think Blake Shapen's best days are actually still ahead of him, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, as Zach said, you kind of have to prove it on the field. So let's talk a little bit about, just the Big 12 as a whole. So all 14 teams in the conference, there are 14 this year, play this weekend, mostly against opponents that they should beat. However, there are 2 Power 5 matchups. TCU will welcome future Big 12 team Colorado to Fort Worth. It's the long-awaited debut of Coach Prime in Boulder, And then West Virginia has a pretty tough one. They've got to go to Happy Valley to play number 7 Penn State. I can't remember when I wrote it, but I remember writing that Neil Brown is on the hot seat this year, I think, for West Virginia. Not an easy game to start off with. Out of those 2 or any of them, really, is there any game on the Big 12 schedule? I'm sure, obviously, we're all going to be interested to see what happens at McLane Stadium, but, which one are you guys kind of most interested in watching this week?
I mean, the one I have it circled. I don't know if it's really Big 12, but I'm looking forward to that. I think it's Thursday. Is it Utah and Florida? Is that what it is, Thursday? I know that's supposed to be a really good matchup Thursday night that I've had circled, because Saturdays are going to be crazy traveling to Waco and everything. But I definitely want to catch that one when it goes on there. But I'm always interested to see TCU with Sonny Dykes and everything. More interested in that than West Virginia. Neil Brown, former Sun Belt coach. So I remember him when he was doing his deal. But I'm real interested to see where TCU goes for sure. I feel like they're going up and up. I mean, obviously after last season.
Yeah, I mean, last year I think nobody would have predicted national championship game.
Yeah,
and I felt like Max Duggan was a really, really big reason for all that. He actually got my Heisman vote. He was huge in the Big 12 championship game. They ended up losing that game to K-State, but still he put the team on his back. And then obviously, they won a big national semifinal game, getting the national championship game. And, even though Georgia wins that game comfortably, I mean, I still felt like TCU, everything was gravy last year, really. And so I'm with you, Keff. I mean, Sonny Dykes in 1 year there in Fort Worth, it's been pretty incredible what he's done.
Yeah,
So,
especially after switching sides like that, coming over from SMU the way he did, and then to do what he did with TCU, even though it got blown out, as you were saying, it's still quite an accomplishment for that school to be in the national championship. I remember being in high school, went to high school just outside Fort Worth, and this is 2003 to 2006. I graduated with 6, and I went to a bowl game somewhere in there, and it was the Fort Worth Bowl. TCU, obviously they got the berth there, and there's like nobody there, and it was they were a much smaller program way back then, and just to see where they've come in that 20 some odd years, it's impressive what they've done.
Yeah, no doubt. And I know it was kind of an acrimonious divorce, but Gary Patterson deserves a ton of credit too on all of that. So, I mean, I still feel like they're going to probably end up putting a statue of that dude out there, probably with his pants all hitched up, I mean, I always called him Coach Stompy Foot. He was just always,
stomping around.
He was kind of got like this Chris Farley thing going. Anyway, Zach, save me from this.
I have to agree with you that of those 2, the TCU Colorado game is just like storylines abound in that one, right? Like much like Texas State, how is all the newness at Colorado gonna kind of mesh, and how is Coach Prime going to adjust to big time college football? He's already pretty big time, right? But other Big 12 games, I don't know. Just because I've been in Austin for the last 6 years, that I'm looking forward to seeing what Texas actually looks like. Are they back? Right? Is Quinn Ewers taking a step? Is Sark the quarterback whisperer that he can be? I know Rice is kind of a tomato can, but I'm also interested in seeing JT Daniels. This is his 3rd start for a 3rd different team at DKR. So I think that game for of different reasons I have circled, but yeah, of those two, definitely Colorado TCU. I think that's the game of the week in the Big 12 for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how much we'll learn about the Longhorns, with them playing Rice, but I'm with you on it'll be interesting to see if it's the same old Texas where they don't really live up to expectation. Again, they're picked high in the Big 12, and that really hasn't worked out for them, so I always feel like they're perpetually overrated, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm gonna be interested in that West Virginia Penn State game. Just like I said, there's a lot of heat on Neil Brown and the Mountaineers, and so they don't necessarily have to win this game, I don't think, but a good showing would probably go a long way, and maybe try to build that the confidence of that team. And yeah, it's just fun that games are back. As Keff said, there'll be others in other conferences that we're watching. I mean, he mentioned Utah. That's two pretty tough games. So Florida is who they're playing on Thursday.
I'm pretty sure I have that right. I hope I don't have that wrong.
Yeah, and Cam Rising is still questionable for that game, so we don't know if he's going to play either. So
wow.
It is Utah, Florida. Is that right, Zach?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Florida at Utah. First time the SEC team is going to Utah, I think, too. Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Last year, obviously, for Utah in the Pac-12, and I'm sure a lot of Baylor fans will tune into that game just to see, the team Baylor will play next week. So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Keff, will we see you here at McLane Stadium on Saturday?
Absolutely. I will be there bright and early. Make sure I beat all that 35 traffic coming up from San Marcos. Just a couple hour drive. I did it last year, so I still know the route. Just go north.
Yeah,
pretty easy.
The pro move, I may not want to say this on the podcast, but a lot of times is to go take the loop 340, when you kind of get to Waco or Highway 6 is, take the loop and kind of come into McLane Stadium the back way, which would be University Parks Drive, and then you'll hit MLK and kind of come in the back way. That might save you from some of that I-35 traffic in Waco. So there you go.
It's funny because as you mentioned MLK, I remember the media parking being on MLK.
Yeah,
the lot that I had. So
it is
perfect. Yeah. I'm going to do that. The 340 loop.
Yes, there you go.
Take that loop and is it almost like you go a little bit past the stadium and then you come back around?
Yeah, it's just coming in from the other direction. Yeah, the opposite side of.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll get on that. I'll get on that for sure.
Cool.
But I also want to congratulate Zach on covering Baylor over here, man. It's exciting for you. It's really cool. I know we ran into each other a few times when you're at the Hill Country News. So man, it's pretty cool to see you up there. I'm excited to see you at McLane Stadium this Saturday.
Yeah, I'm pumped. I've kind of dove in head first here, and I'm pretty confident about knowing as much as I can about at least the 2023 version of the Bears, and I feel pretty confident in everything. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Saturday is going to be a blast. I got a lot planned, and yeah, it'll be good to see you again, Kev.
Have you been to a Baylor game at Baylor before?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. Last year was my first one, as you were saying, Brice. How 2020 was your first one in San Marcos. I had no idea all the kids ran out.
Yes, that's probably Baylor's best tradition is the Baylor line.
So cool.
Yeah, the Baylor line is kind of their thing, and and each year the freshman class keeps getting bigger and bigger because they just increase enrollment. So yeah, I'm sure it'll be fun to watch again, like it always is on on Saturday. So yeah, Kev, thanks for hopping on with us, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do a podcast, Win Now or Get Bent, covering Texas State. And I got my producer coming out. He's gonna record that, all the students running out, all the kids running out. So that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So check out that podcast from Kev. There, it's on YouTube. I watched your episode the other day about the all the new players and stuff. So
yeah.
Cool. And then obviously tune in next week where I'll give you more driving directions here on the podcast.
Yeah. I'm going to UTSA next week. You got any tips there?
My in-laws live over near you, so maybe I do. There you go.
I'm in a great
guys.
spot.
Appreciate y'all.